Good morning, Tamu.
Good morning, Michelle.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So grateful that you're here with me today. Thank you so much for saying yes to joining me on Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
Yes,
Um,
thank you for the opportunity.
of course, we met through Clubhouse, and I felt like we had a connection the moment that I heard you speaking, and I'm really grateful that I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I'm excited to share you with my audience today. We have a very important topic. We're going to talk about caring for a child with mental illness, which I am so grateful that you are going to bring to my audience, because I'm quite sure that there are more people out there struggling with this than we may know. So what I'm doing with my series is I am out to elevate the conversation around mental health, to inspire people with personal stories, to educate them on certain mental health challenges, and to empower them to be able to help themselves and their loved ones. So this is such a great topic for empowering other parents, educating other. Okay. Could you take a second, just introduce yourself, Tamu, who you are, where you live, and what you do for a living?
Yes, so I am Tamu Lewis. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the co-founder of the Thompson Foundation, and we provide mental health education in schools, communities, and organizations. I'm also an HR leader, and I am a parent support coach to help other parents that are going through similar things that I've gone through with my daughter.
Got it. Thank you. And when we first met, I think the reason why I wanted to talk to you was you had shared in Clubhouse a little bit about your experience with your own family member dealing with a mental health challenge. Could you take a second and tell us about your brother? I would love for the audience to know a little bit more about him.
Yes. So my brother, who the foundation is named after, was Lee Thompson Young, and we lost him to suicide in 2013. And he was suffering in silence with bipolar disorder. And so, as a result of losing him, is why we wanted to start this organization. I founded it with my mom. It is a nonprofit. And of course, through that situation, we learned a lot more about mental health challenges, illness, issues, and of course, dealing with the stigma. So that was part of the reason he was suffering in silence, right? He was actually an actor, a successful actor, and he was filming Rizzoli and Isles. He was a regular on Rizzoli and Isles at the time on, it was a show on TNT. And because he was suffering in silence, his cast members didn't know that he had an illness. So perhaps if they knew, they may have noticed some signs. And, after the fact, when I was speaking with one of his cast members, she said that they noticed that he wasn't himself at the table reads and rehearsals and things. And they asked him about it, and he just said he was tired. So if they had the framework of knowing that he actually had a mental illness, then that might have triggered them to take some action and not just accept him saying that he was tired, since he wasn't himself. So.
Oh, this internet is giving me grief today. Oh boy. Okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
The internet is being really iffy. So sorry about that. I might freeze, you freeze a little bit. It just seems to be very interesting time on the internet today.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. So you were just finishing your comment about that.
And I'm not sure where it froze, but about if his cast members had known that he had a mental illness, then they may have not just accepted him saying, "Oh, I'm just feeling tired." So that may have triggered them to do something that may have helped.
I talk about all the time having the courage to ask people how they're doing. A lot of times I think people feel like the burden of, if I ask them how they're doing, I'm going to have to fix it for them. Right. And I say, it doesn't take much to just connect with someone. and give it up that you think you have to fix it, because you don't have to fix it. You can literally just be there and listen
Right.
for what is going on with them. I think more often than not, it's awkward, so people look away and they make the bold assumption that someone else will look after them.
Right.
And it's so hard. It's so hard. Tell us about the foundation. Tell us about the work you're doing to honor him and celebrate his life through that work.
Yes. So, what we've been able to do starting in 2014 is to offer sort of preventative programs in the schools, working directly with the students. So, we have mental health professionals that will go in and do weekly sessions in small groups. We found that that has been most effective and impactful for them in establishing a connection. And I mean, we've even had some students to come forward and say they're thinking about suicide, and just have like that trusted adult that is that mental health professional to be able to connect with at school and then get the support that they need. We've also done some classroom intervention training with teachers to help them. As you know, these days, a lot of times there's a lot of students in a classroom, and it's a lot for a teacher to manage, and especially if they're students with some mental health challenges. So working with them. And we've also done some parent sessions as well, like collaborating with the PTA organization at the different schools. Of course, with the pandemic, all of that in-person type of training and education came to a halt. But we have been able to offer some programs virtually with parents and sponsor therapy sessions for people who may not be able to afford those sessions themselves and may not know how to find a therapist that they're fit with. So we've been able to do that during this pandemic time.
Yeah, before the pandemic, we had a challenge, and I'm quite sure we were talking about this before we went live. It's worse. The elevated suicide rates amongst our youth. And then you factor in isolation and quarantine, and our kids must just be struggling. And I worry about the statistics, and I worry about more suicide in the face of the pandemic and the impact mentally all of this had on kids. Tell us about your journey with your daughters. You have two beautiful daughters, and Naya, has been diagnosed, and you have had your journey with her. For other parents out there who have a child with a mental illness, could you just share your journey and your story around that experience?
Yes. So my oldest daughter, Naya, she's 19 now, and we actually adopted her when she was 5 months old. And probably around the age of 7 is when she was aware. She's always been very like self aware of what's going on and in tune with herself. So around the same time that I noticed, look, whatever we're doing, it's not enough, it's not working, she kind of noticed at the same time. And we were fortunate enough to be able to go through our pediatrician and get some recommendations for therapists. But I remember when Naya was 7 that she had come home, and she was in the bathroom, and sort of like a really like thoughtful glance. And she said, "Mommy, I need help." And I said, "Don't you worry. I've already felt that. I have already made a call, and we have an appointment. You know, we're going to go, we're going to see if this is a fit, and if you think it's helpful." And we did that, and we had a really good relationship with the pediatrician. So the therapist that she recommended for Naya did happen to be a fit. So Naya was able to work with her. I will say that I did feel alone throughout the different phases, frustrated because the phases vary like through her years, and we would learn a particular technique or read a particular book, and it would work, right, for a couple of weeks, and then it wouldn't work anymore to kind of soothe her. And so it was a lot of trial and error. And as a parent, I wanted to find like a mental health professional that could give me a solution, okay, that would stick.
Yeah.
And I just had to learn that every situation is so different. So the professionals can't prescribe. There is no one size fits all. And so you do have to you have to be open and resilient, and you have to just try things and be observant and see what works for your child. Now, often as parents, we want to fix things, right? And when we get educated, we feel like we know what should work and what would be best. But sometimes the treatments that I thought would resonate didn't.
Yeah.
So I had to just really try to be in tune with Naya and see and observe what really worked for her and try that until it didn't work, and then figure out something else.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a community of support, like of other moms who you were able to talk to? I guess I would feel for the parent who has a child newly diagnosed and doesn't have a community of support.
I will say that I did not have a community of other moms to talk to. It was mostly Naya's therapist. And then I will also admit that because of the feelings and the unknown and not wanting to be judged and the stigma, I did not lean on my personal network as much as I could have. Mm-hmm. So I just assumed that my family members and like my girlfriends wouldn't understand because they didn't have a child with mental illness. So a lot of times I didn't even share my frustrations, or I would share when it was at a boiling point and then sort of explain it away. So I still wasn't really getting the support because I wasn't giving them the opportunity to support me.
Is that why you became a parent support coach?
Yes, because I do feel like if I had known someone or heard of someone who actually was in the situation versus the mental health professionals, and it's their job to help me, right? That would have given me a sense of community and a safe space, and that someone can actually identify with these feelings that I'm having and these situations. I will say in Naya's later teenage years, I did go to the NAMI parent support groups. Nice. And I was able to meet with other parents there and find some resources that I did not know about. The only thing there is that there was never, like, I was always the only minority in the room. And so, that's sort of disheartening as well.
Yeah, for sure. But you raise a good resource. People need to know, they need to know about all resources, right? There are many in your community, and you shouldn't feel like you got to do it by yourself. It's such an important point, but you also need to feel accepted, and you need to be amongst people that you can identify with, right? There needs to be that space of safety. But Tamu, you shared with me before we went on the air the impact of your brother's suicide and how that affected you and your own mental illness.
Right. So what I'll say about that is Lee was born when I was 12. So I always felt like his protector as his older sister, and I helped to take care of him and take him where he needed to go. And so then and as he became adult, we became even closer. And so for me not to have the opportunity to help him in that moment, when he was suffering was heartbreaking for me. And I felt like a piece of my heart was gone. So I immediately, as I mentioned, began to, I founded this nonprofit with my mom and started doing all this work. Meanwhile, I had a day job. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 kids, and I didn't really give myself the time to grieve and process the loss of my brother. Mm-hmm. So eventually, I did fall into depression, and I had to keep going, of course, but in that, continuing to maintain my responsibilities, sometimes the weight was just so heavy, and I would feel like I literally couldn't breathe. Sometimes I would be triggered and wouldn't expect it, and I'd be trying to drive somewhere. I'm crying, I can't breathe, I have to pull over. And so eventually I did have to seek therapy for myself and even take medication to get through that. And I'll tell you, I was angry about it because I thought, well, wait a minute, why am I having all these symptoms? Why am I feeling sick? I'm the one that stayed, right? So
Yeah.
I was angry at my brother as well as hurt and heartbroken.
Yeah. It's always interesting when I meet other people that have like different perspectives about mental illness, right? Like your mom affected by a loved one, you had a brother, you navigated it. Our lenses become much more broadened around mental illness, right? And it's so important because, you can say you care for someone, but when you navigate it yourself and you feel it, it's a very different kind of empathy. It's a very
Yes.
different kind of compassion you have because you really do understand it. What advice do you have for parents out there, parent to parent right now, for the moms or the dads who might be watching you because they tuned into this important topic? What would you say?
I would say, first, to give yourself grace. There is no playbook that can address your situation specifically, what may be going on with your child. So give yourself grace, do the best you can, be open, and also be willing to talk about what's going on, even if you feel like it's horrible, you don't want to describe this situation, you don't want people to judge you because of the situation that occurred. The thing that I learn and I like to tell people, when you do reach out to a mental health professional, which I advocate, you have to be honest because they cannot come up with a treatment plan or make suggestions if they don't have all of the information. So you could potentially have your child misdiagnosed because you didn't say everything that actually happened, and how quickly it happened, or what you think may have been the trigger. You really need to be honest and share that information. And one thing that helped me along the way was I would keep a journal almost just in my phone, in the notes app, because I have an Apple phone. So it was easy, no matter where I was, what was happening, I put the date and I could put what happened, so that then when it was time for us to meet with Naya's therapist, I could go back to that. Because you'll find that as time passes from a particular incident, it doesn't seem quite as bad. By the time you get there to that appointment, you may leave out some details that would be very helpful for that therapist. So those notes really came in handy. And I would also say, if you are fortunate enough to have a support group and know some other parents who are dealing with similar situations, talk to them and see what resources they have, and explore the resources. You might find some different things that would be helpful that you didn't think of.
Yeah, I love all of those. I want to add one to that, and that's like, take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like when we love someone with a mental illness, we sort of get lost in wanting to care for them, and then we forget about ourselves, and we can't help them if we're not okay.
No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I will say, and of course, there's different ways to take care of yourself, but certainly find something that resonates with you, because you will find yourself more agitated and your fuse is shorter. It's harder for you to be compassionate with your child if you don't have that self-care, and you want to show up as your best self for your child. So you could do something like before the pandemic. When we would be having issues, I mean, not in the middle of an issue, but in terms of self-care, I mean, something simple that I would do is I would take myself to the movies, just because for those 2 hours, I could focus on what was happening in the movie. I was by myself. I didn't have to make sure somebody had something to eat, somebody had something to drink, and just lose myself in the movie for the 2 hours and then go back home like, okay, and of course, I'm a meditation type person, so I always do like the meditation and the walks outside and things like that. But sometimes, you need to just get away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great thought there. You are also an HR professional.
Yes.
And I've been having great conversations with different leaders of organizations and HR professionals just about the workplace and the impact that this pandemic is having on their people. Many people working from home, feeling disconnected,
Mhm.
probably working too many hours.
Yes.
What have you seen as an HR leader, the impact the pandemic has had on your people, and how has your organization been trying to provide support to them?
Yes. So I would certainly say that the pandemic, of course, has caused isolation, right? Because my organization was very good prior to the pandemic of having people get together and just be able to share client stories. It's a professional services organization. So a lot of our consultants are used to being able to go to the client site and work with their client in person. And now it's virtual, right? And so you're at home, you and your computer screen, and you don't take the natural breaks that you would take in person, right? When you need to get some water or use the restroom, you bump into people and you talk to people along the way. You stop and you take breaks. At home, you don't do that because you don't have those same types of interactions. So we try to remind people to take the breaks that they need. I do think we can improve in that area and maybe have a focus day each week, where we just kind of send reminders, like on our intranet, to stand up and stretch, or
Yeah.
take a deep breath. I think what our managers have been really good at is being flexible. With our employees. And so allowing them that time to take care of themselves and to take a break and, do whatever appointments they need. So the flexibility is really big for us. And then we've also spoken with our managers about kind of being showing compassion when an employee does come to you with an issue that they wouldn't normally have come to you. It wouldn't normally have come up, but it has in these circumstances.
Yeah, I was just talking to this woman, Mary, and I'm going to interview her on Friday. And we were talking about, the hesitancy to want to engage an employee who might be struggling, right? There's that fine line. You would know this better than anyone, that you don't want to sort of get into their personal space, but you want them to know that you come from a place of compassion and empathy. Do you have any recommendations on creating a safe space for leaders to do the right thing without feeling that trepidation, like, ooh, I'm about to cross the line?
Right. Yes. I think that you can create a safe space by just asking the question, how are you? And waiting, right? Like you don't have to imply that you want them to share like personal details, but just say, I'm doing a check in. How are you? I know that it's different working at home, and that the lines can be blurred more easily, right? Because you're working at home. So you're working more hours, like you stated. And you may not be, when it is time to kind of be present with your family, you're still thinking about work. So I think just asking that question and then seeing what the employee has to say. And if something does come up that you aren't comfortable addressing, you can just say, I appreciate you sharing that information. I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to contact HR and see if there's any resources that might be helpful to you.
Awesome. Awesome advice. Yeah. I feel like we always feel like we have to fix it. We don't necessarily have to fix it. We can just bridge people. We could be the greatest bridge for them to, get support,
Right.
and that's a victory in and of itself.
Yes.
So is there anything, I want to loop back on your nonprofit a little bit. Is there anything that you're doing in the nonprofit we should know about, we should plug into? Tell us about that.
Yes, I think the easiest thing to do would be for you to follow us on social media. So we are Lee Thompson Young Foundation. It's spelled out on Facebook,
Mhm.
and it's LTY Foundation on Instagram and Twitter. And so any upcoming programs that are open to the public, any panel discussions, we would have posted on there. And like I mentioned, we do have the ability to sponsor therapy sessions and help people get matched with therapists. So certainly go to our social media pages and you can message us directly there as well if you have any specific questions or specific needs, and we may be able to provide you with a resource if it's not something that we can provide directly.
I love that you are providing sponsored sessions, because sometimes, more times than not, the barrier to care is the issue.
Yes.
And you're really working on that. And I just applaud you. I think that's so important, because it's one thing to want therapy. It's another thing to have the means to get therapy. So
Yes.
really, really great. As we start to wrap up, I know that given that you've been so deeply touched by mental illness in your life, do you have anything, any final words or thoughts you want to leave with people just around the topic of mental health?
Yes. One of the things that I like to leave people with is the 5 signs, like knowing the 5 signs that someone may be struggling mentally or may be in distress. And so maybe you can recognize those and then take action. So those 5 signs are lack of self-care, agitation, withdrawal, personality changes, and hopelessness.
Hmm.
So, and like you mentioned earlier, don't feel like you have to solve the issue if you notice these 5 signs, but you can be there. You can ask them how they are. Like, you asking the question is not going to cause someone to be in more pain. It's going to give them the opportunity to share if they want to. And if it's a situation where you are uncomfortable, then you can reach out to a mental health professional. Even if you're not comfortable making an actual call, there is a crisis text line where you can text. And I was actually trained on the crisis text line, and I was a volunteer on that text line for a couple of years. And it's 741-741, and you can just text help. So even if it's not happening to you, but you're the person that's observing it, you can text and say, what do I do? Can I, is there a number I should call, or whatever the case may be? You can use that as a resource when you notice those signs.
Amazing, amazing resources. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, for the stand you are. I'm so grateful to have met you, and I'm so grateful for what you just shared with our audience. Thank you so much, Tamu.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate the opportunity, certainly.
And we will stay in touch. I love the great work you're doing. And if I can support you in any way, please let me know.
Yes, I will certainly. And I think you have it going across the screen too, but people can also reach out to me via my website at tamulewis.com and let me know if you're interested in working together and how I might be able to support you on your parenting journey.
And if they go to your website, you shared with me that you, if they access your website, you will give them what?
So I have a free gift. So it's a tip sheet for parenting, and it's just some of the top 5 kind of lessons that I've learned in terms of behaviors to avoid. And as parents, we want to do our best and show up as our best selves for our children. So I have that guide on there that you can get, that you can access via my website.
Amazing. Thank you, my dear, and have a good rest of your day. And thanks for spending some time with me today.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.